another Rock Talk with the Doc Rocker. I am Jeff Bonomo, joined again by the Doc Rocker himself, Danton Arlotto. And right now we have our homework assignments. And what that is, everyone, if you're just tuning in for the first time, we give each other an album that we've never heard before. We take about a week or so to listen to it, and then come back onto the podcast and spit it back out at each other and see what we think. Now, this week it's something special because you actually have 3 albums. You only gave me 1. So let's talk about why you have 3 albums and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I am really excited to announce that in the very near future, we're going to have a really special guest come on our podcast for an episode on doom metal. The legendary doom metal singer himself, Robert Lowe from Solitude Aeternus, who's also been featured with the likes of Candlemass and most recently with Grief Collector. So in preparation for us to have a really fun talk with Mr. Lowe, nice little interview, I figured I should do some digging. Jeff mentioned a couple of albums by all 3 of those bands, all 3 of which feature Rob Lowe. So I figured, you know what, I'm just going to jump in and check out all 3 of them. I'm going to do all 3 back to back to back and do a nice little cross comparison and see what the full extent of Rob's singing technique entails, as well as just get to know, better 3 different bands that I've never heard of before. So I had a lot of fun with it this week. Jeff, what was your assignment?
My assignment was Watchtower. It was called what was it called? Mathematics Volume 1 or something?
Something like maybe Concepts of Math? Yeah, Concepts of Math, Volume 1.
Concepts of Math, Volume 1.
Or no, Book 1. I just looked it up. Yeah.
Book 1, so. Volume 1, Okay. Well, let's start there. Watchtower is a band I knew of from way back when. They actually started in the 80s. The weird thing about Watchtower is the original Watchtower was fronted by the lead singer from the band Dangerous Toys, which they're like this sleaze rock 80s band that I remember from the MTV days. I would never think this guy was in Watchtower. The first Watchtower album never really did it for me. It's a prog rock / prog metal album from way back when. I haven't listened to it in years, but I remember the name. So when you brought this up to me, I'm like, is this the same band? And you're like, yes, it's the same band. Different singer now. It's not the guy from Dangerous Toys. So this is what I think about this album. Music-wise, it is super crazy, thrashy, tons of riffage, crazy lead sections. I really like the guitar tone on this too. It's really, really nice. It's like Spiral Architect, if you remember them. They're like a math metal kind of prog rock band I gave to you a while back. Dream Theater on Crack. That's what I would like to describe the band as. Because, oh my God, is it technical. It is the definition of like math metal / prog metal, like to the extreme. Technology in Action is a really complex, thrashy kind of song, which is really cool. The Size of Matter has this really cool psychedelic like interlude in the middle of it, which I really liked, like how things kind of just like abruptly changed to like other things in this album. Mathematica Calculus.
Yeah, the finale.
These titles are great. It's like a 10-minute epic that just like blew my mind. Now, all right, there's complex time signatures, even more complicated song structures, highly technical playing on like all fronts. The bass guitar, everything is so technical. Wailing vocals. The vocalist is really cool. He's like my type of vocalist who really likes to just sing like a power metal guy.
Yeah, I like them too.
The album is really, really cool. It's an EP, technically an EP, I guess.
Yeah, it's short.
But it really needs several listens to really sink in, because it was like a complete like assault on your senses when you listen to this for the first time, because it's like, wow, it was really. I gotta listen to it again. I listened to it twice so far this week. Listened to a lot of music this week, actually. But yeah, I listened to this twice. Again, I listened to the second time was this afternoon to refresh myself for this. But I really need to dig deeper into this to kind of get used to what they're doing. because it's really out there. It's really complex. And at some points, it's almost too much for the first listen. You know, I know when I go back to it and I hear these parts again, I'm going to be like, that is really cool. This is really interesting, because some of it just sounded like almost like a mess, you know, like here's a jumbled mess. But it's not. When you listen to it a second time, you're starting to hear the patterns. That's not kind of how I have to kind of enjoy these really progressive things. Like the first time through, I'm not going to get it most of the time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's just how I am with a lot of this prog metal music, especially math metal, which I consider this math metal, because it's I
consider it math metal too.
Prog metal, a step up from prog metal at least. You know, it's like Dream Theater on their most complex day is like a normal song from these guys. So overall, I like it. I'm gonna give it like a 7.5 out of 10. Just because I need to go and hear it again, because it was an assault on my senses the first time.
I think that number might climb a little bit for you on repeat listens, because
it probably will. Because everything about it I liked. There wasn't like, oh, I hate the vocalist, or the drummer sucks, or the guitar player, you know, whatever, his tones, like the tone wasn't good or whatever. Like, everything was good. Tone was good. It's mixed really well. Came out, I think, in 2016.
Yep.
So it's a few years old. The drumming was incredible. And like I said, there's nothing like that bothered me.
Yeah, but there's just stuff that you couldn't quite digest on the first listen or two. So it's a matter of time. I myself, over the past like 2.5 weeks, I listened to it several times, maybe like 5 or 6 at least. And each time I listened to it, I like it more than the previous time I listened to it. So
now, how did you discover this band?
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned Spiral Architect, because I had a friend reach out to me, which kind of started this whole thing. Which I don't know if he's a member yet on the Rock Talk. I'll have to talk to him. But he mentioned he sent me Spiral Architect by Black Sabbath off of Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and he's like, and then I saw that and I was like, wait, I thought we did a thing on that, and I was thinking back, I was like, if I remember right, I think that album I kind of just didn't really like. So I actually dug through our old podcast archives and looked at the homework episode that has Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and I talked about that, and I was rewatching it, and I re-listened to Spiral Architect because my friend suggested it to me. I was like, oh, the second time, it definitely hit me a little better than the first time I heard it. I think given that it came at the end of the album, it kind of like at that point I had a really sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah, you were done with it.
I kind of tuned it out, but I listened to just that song out of context several weeks later and was like, oh yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I like that, you know? So, and then that got me thinking, it's like, oh yeah, there was that real wacky Spiral Architect band that I listened to for another. So I was just kind of going on this trip down memory lane. And the one night I was listening to Spiral Architect on YouTube while I was working on my computer. And I didn't realize that I had autoplay turned on. I usually don't have that on because I hate autoplay. I hate just shuffling through. I like to always know and plan and have what I'm listening to. But it was, for whatever reason, it was on. I don't know, maybe an update or something, and I didn't realize it. And next thing I know, I'm like, wait a second. This is like just continuous new music for a really long time. I don't remember the album being this long. And I looked down at my phone and I saw it went right into this. It went into Concepts of Math by Watchtower. And I was like, whoa, what is this? And it really caught my attention. I was like, this is really cool. So I started it over, turned autoplay off. So now I was like, now I'm aware of what I'm listening to. I've finished Spiral Architect and now I'm on Watchtower. And they're both stylistically very, very similar. And they're both really, really cool. Spiral Architect is one of those, I kind of go back to it every now and then, just because that's just this wacky, cool thing that I know I'm not going to totally understand. And that's part of what attracts me a lot. It's like, you know, I can't predict what they're going to do, you know? So yeah, so that was how I got into them. So I stumbled upon these guys literally by accident and I fell in love with them right away. And then as we were talking about it, I figured, let me do some digging. So I looked up the band, then I found out that they were like actually from the late 80s. And I listened to that album. Oh, I forget the name of it. You talked about it. Conspiracies of whatever it is.
Their first album.
The first album. I didn't care too much for that one either. Definitely not as much as Concepts of Math, but like apparently they had like this big kind of run for a couple of years in the late 80s, early 90s, and then nothing for like 11 or 12 years. And then this album came out, and I was all excited seeing that it was called Book 1, and I'm like, oh, yeah, where's Book 2? I want to, and nothing. Yeah, there isn't a Book 2 yet. But I'm very, very, optimistic that we will see one someday. And when it does, I'll be very excited because I really enjoy Book 1. So I'm glad you liked it because I figured it was just one of those. It was just kind of like it was like a get a load of this. Like, look at this weird, cool thing that I found, and I'm really excited about it. So I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, I hope I can listen to it on my road trip this weekend. Maybe I can turn your brother onto it, or the other guys in the band.
Yeah. Let me know what
we
they
got a lot
think.
of traveling to do this weekend, so hopefully, like, they'll let me work the stereo for a little bit. I'll throw this on because it has something for everyone, especially people who like extreme metal or technical metal. There's
something here for you, definitely. Yeah, and it's short. I think it's just over a half an hour. It's not very lengthy, but like it just hits you in the face with a hammer, man. It's nuts. It's really cool.
So that's all I have to say about that. Let's move on to your assignment, which was pretty much like, here's some albums from the introducing to doom metal, basically.
Yeah,
a little bit more into the doom metal, because I gave you 3 doom metal albums before this.
We've tiptoed a little bit with Solitude Eternus.
Solitude Eternus. There was Into the Depths of Sorrow, Beyond the Crimson Horizon, and Through the Dark Tower. That was getting you set up for our interview we were supposed to do today, but I believe Mr. Robert Lowe is having some technical problems getting into our Zoomiverse. So
we'll get him in another day. Yeah,
right.
No problem.
So to get you ready for it, you'll be even more ready now, because you decided to listen to 3 albums. I gave you one. I gave you Tyrant Hereafter, which came out last year. For me, it was one of the stronger releases that I got to listen to last year. One of my favorite albums of 2020. But you also listened to King of the Grey Islands by Candlemass, which was the first album that Robert Lowe did when he joined Candlemass, and the newest thing he's done by a band called Grief Collector. What was the name of that album?
End Delirium.
Okay, there we go. Take it away.
Released in 2021. So yeah, it was one of those, like, because all the doom stuff that I've started checking out mainly with Solitude Eternus, I really liked, and it's funny, I'm just like geeking out over like how like this fast, crazy, technical, progressive stuff is like awesome and it's my favorite. And I like doom metal a lot for all the opposite reasons. It's real slow and it's real simple and it's real heavy and it's real indulgent. There's a lot of ties to like classic like 80s heavy metal, which I always have a soft spot for, especially being like like a new wave fan, like listening to stuff like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. There's sometimes you could get a couple of parallels between some of that stuff and some of the stuff we're seeing here in doom, which I really like. The high operatic vocals, these rich belting lines, these heavy guitars, these nice, really nice decorative solos from the guitar parts. And I always like some of like the real heavier kind of stuff, like going into like new metal and like gent and like all the things where you have like a lot of like double bass kicking and like really, really heavy, aggressive sounding stuff. And you get good snippets of that pretty consistently in doom. So I knew I was going to dig this, and we talked about Tyrant Hereafter since it dropped last year. It's one of those albums you just keep mentioning. And it's one of those, like, I put it on my queue, like, I'll listen to it someday. I'll check it out whenever, and I'm sure I'll love it. So sure enough, I listened to it and I loved it. I'll actually, just to prove it, I'll show you my screen, and you can see I went down on Spotify and I put the little green heart on every song that I enjoyed on the first listen.
Nice.
And pretty much every song has a heart, and even, not that I didn't like Pieces of Mine, but it's one of those, like, it just didn't.
Oh my God! That's my favorite song on the album.
That's your favorite song? Our tastes are so different. That one didn't catch me as much as the other ones did. I would say my favorite probably has to be When the Sky Falls. I really enjoyed that one, as well as the closing track from The Tower. Now, this one I listened to twice, and I enjoyed it more the second time, I think, than the first. The first time I was like, oh yeah, that was great. That was solid. It was exactly what I expected, and it was really cool, and it was whatever. And then I started King of the Grey Islands, and at first I was feeling, I like Tyrant better. I like the kind of more classic metal sound that was offered on Hereafter. But once again, you could see every song. I was like, ooh, that's awesome. That's awesome. The only ones that don't have hearts are ones that just serve as little preludes into. So like Prologue is essentially part of Emperor of the Void. Likewise, the Opal City is a little just minute long prelude that leads into the closing track, Embracing the Stick. So like
that closing track is amazing though.
And the closing track is awesome. I love every song on this album. I thought it was awesome. By the time I got to, I would say probably Demonia 6 and Destroyer, was like, wow, I really like this group way better than even what I liked with Tyrant. Man of Shadows is probably my favorite. That one I really, really dug. But like each of these songs had a bit of a unique flavor, especially with this group, Candlemass. I'm definitely curious to hear their albums that came out after this that also feature Mr. Lowe, because I thought, like, harmony wise and scale wise, from what the guitars were doing and a lot of their riffs, there were a lot of different flavors. You know, there was a lot of like your like real dark, like heavy kind of like doom metal stuff, but there were also a lot of moments that made me kind of turn my head a bit. Like, I haven't heard those notes put together that way before. There were a lot of those little bits from song to song that really caught my attention and kind of, you know, tickled my interest a little bit. I really liked it. I thought it was really it was a lot more of what you can come to expect from the genre, but it also offered a lot of something new and unexpected, which I really like.
Well, Candlemass is considered, you know, one of the biggest doom metal bands ever. Like,
I'd never heard of them. I had no idea who the heck these guys were, and now I see why they have that accolade, because this album is fantastic.
I believe Robert Lowe was the 5th vocalist in his band. Candlemass has been around since the early 80s.
Yeah, I saw that. I was scrolling down the whole discography, and I was like, "Oh, there's a lot of stuff here."
Yeah, they got a lot of albums. They're mainly known for their singer Messiah Marcolin, I believe his name is. He has a similar type of voice as Robert Lowe does. He also has this huge afro, and he dresses like a monk, which is just a great look. After he left, they had a couple different singers before they landed with Robert. I believe in 2007, maybe. I think
this album is dated 2007, so it was
He joined right around there. He joined right before this album. The album may have actually even been written when he joined. I'm not exactly sure. When we do interview him, we'll ask him that. I checked this album out again this past week for the first time in a while, and man,
I remember you were saying you were blown away by it too.
Yeah, more so now than when I first bought it. You know, I bought it. You know, I'm a Candlemass fan, and when I found out one of my favorite metal vocalists joined Candlemass, I'm like, this is gonna be great. And
I would have been excited too.
It's different than Solitude Aeternus, and that's what I think turned me off.
Oh, very different. Yeah.
In the beginning. But listening to it, coming back years later and listening to it now, I'm like, I've been listening to this a lot this week, this album. Especially that last song. I have to mention that last song. At the end of that song, he does this really, really soft vocal line that reminds me so much of like Ronnie James Dio era Sabbath, like Sign of the Southern Cross, Children of the Sea kind of thing, where Ronnie used to sing like real high and like soft. He does that at the end of this song, which really showcases like what this guy can do with his voice, and it is amazing. Such a great album.
Yeah, Robert is definitely a lot more vocally diverse on this album than he is with the stuff I heard in Solitude Aeternus, which isn't a knock to the stuff he did with Solitude Aeternus. He's fantastic in that, and a lot of that is present here, but there's also a couple more sides, a couple more dimensions to his singing in this album. This is like a #1 recommendation for anyone trying to get into doom metal. You got to check out Candlemass. I know I'm going to go through the following albums that came out after this and see how they took this kind of style and took it further. I'm really excited about that. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for this one. And I would say I would maybe give like an 8.5 out of 10 to Hereafter, because it's solid. It's amazing. It's great. But yeah, then we also have our third album, In Delirium by Grief Collector, which once again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. It's all the same stuff. Like, there was hardly a song that and just because not all the songs have hearts doesn't mean I didn't like those. Some of them were just a little, it was like, all right, I get it. It's kind of like, it didn't totally like hook me. Like, oh, this riff is fantastic, or oh, this chorus line is fantastic, or, you know, it was like, all right, this is good. I like it. At worst, the songs in this album are really good. All the ones that have the green hearts for me are like, they were amazing. Winter's Sick is probably my favorite. That second track after the opener. I mean, Corridors was great, and then Winter's Sick came in.
That opener, that's a great opening song, man. When I heard that, I'm like, wow, man, that is killer.
I really like Knee Deep in Devils, that nice big long epic right in the middle. I feel like when I was listening, when we got to Misery Mongers, I liked that one a lot. I feel like that would have been a better follow-up to Knee Deep, and then maybe have 10 Days of Disbelief come a little later in the album. So if I was producing it, I would have rearranged the track order. But that's just a really silly, stupid criticism.
It's a slight nitpick, but
it's a nitpick, exactly.
It's a solid Doom album.
Closing track, then comes The Darkness, was really good, and then I was pleasantly surprised by a very faithful cover of Voodoo by Dio. Speaking of Dio, there's a lot of Dio in what you could hear in Robert Lowe's voice, and I really liked that. I was a little nervous when I heard the first couple notes, and I was like, wait a second, and then I looked, because I was just listening to it. I wasn't looking at the track list, right? So I was listening to it, and I caught it. I was like, wait a second. I was like, uh-oh. Yeah. I always get a little nervous when it comes, because Dio's got like a real special place in my heart, and I know there's a lot of artists who cover him, and there's a lot of contention, like I know like there's like the borderline infamous Killswitch Engage cover of Holy Diver, which funny enough I actually really like. I mean, it's not super faithful. They do a lot of different things, but Howard Jones is a much different singer, and I think he plays to his strengths, and I respect that. But I really feel that Robert Lowe nails a really good Dio sound in his own singing, and Voodoo is very, very faithful to the original, and it's really well done. And I was worried it wouldn't, but it delivered, and it was a really, that was like a nice little bonus little treat for dessert after this amazing album that I really enjoyed. Candlemass was easily my favorite, but these other albums were solid. I thoroughly enjoyed them. I liked the whole set. And I'm looking forward to checking out even more. This is probably something I say at the end of each of our Doom homework segments. We're like, yeah, just give me more Doom. I love it. I want to get more of it. I want to get more Solitude Aeternus. I want to get more Candlemass, definitely. And maybe eventually I'll kind of break away from Robert Lowe and check out some other singers and see if there's anyone who even comes close, because he's amazing. I really like him. I'm super excited. Hopefully in the next couple weeks we could get him in and have a little segment on his career, and we could talk to him about the genre and about his singing career and see what's going on with him now because of all the COVID craziness. I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with him. It's going to be really cool to have him on our podcast, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, me too. And I can echo pretty much everything you said about those three albums. They're all three of them are fantastic, and I'm glad you liked them. I was a little worried about Tyrant, because Tyrant is more of a straightforward rock or metal album in a lot of places than it is a Doom album. And Grief Collector is the other way. That's more of a traditional Doom album, with not a lot of different things going on. Candlemass is Candlemass. That they're in their own. that's their own thing, because that's what Candlemass does. They've been around for so long. They're like the godfathers of Doom. If it's not Black Sabbath or Solitude Aeternus, it's Candlemass. Mm-hmm. And as far as like Doom metal goes, there's a lot out there like that, but these bands I think are doing it really well. Robert Lowe's been attached to a lot of different Doom projects. Concept of God is another one. Last Chapter is another one. He's done a couple other guest vocals on some other things. But these are the main ones, and Tyrant and Grief Collector are his newest projects. That's what he's doing right now. I don't know if Solitude Aeternus is ever going to do a reunion. He's been done with Candlemass for a long time, so I can just hope the guys from Solitude Aeternus get back and do something, because that band is one of my favorite Doom bands and one of my favorite bands, really. I'll have to give you more of that, because they do have more albums. You were saying, like, he starts working some different weird things with his voice, different harmonies and stuff in the Candlemass album. But there's also 3 more Solitude Aeternus albums after the one I gave you. The latest one I gave you was Through the Darkest Hour, which I think is 1996. 94, yeah. Is it 94? So I thought it was. Right. You got Downfall, then you got Adagio, and then you got, the last one they ever did was called Alone. So he continued to experiment with a lot of weird vocal harmonies and stuff, especially in Adagio. There's a lot of, I was just listening to that today, actually going to work. Oh, okay. This morning, yeah. What a great thing to wake up to. Doom, Put me in the right frame of mind for work today. But so check out that stuff. We do have a lot of people I reached out to, musicians that work professionally in the metal genre, and we're going to be hopefully bringing them into our podcast. I'll say right now, we've been talking to the new vocalist for Sanctuary. He's also the lead vocalist to Witherfall. His name is Joseph Michael. He's a fantastic vocalist. We're going to have him in here, I think, in about 2 weeks, somewhere in September. Brandon from Crowbot, I've been talking to him. He wants to come on.
Yeah, right in time for the new Maiden album to come out, too. So we're going to have a lot to talk about this September.
The Maiden album to come out. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. So if you like what we're doing here, of course, you got to subscribe and join the Rock Talk with Doc Rocker Facebook group and talk to us. That's all I got. What do you got?
That pretty much nails it, Jeff. I have nothing else to say.
I guess then we're done. We'll see you again on Rock Talk with the Doc Rocker. That was our homework, and it was a bunch of really good albums. So rock on.